being cared for is understood. Being seen and respected is understood. Being engaged and connected and someone to laugh with, that's all understood.
Tara Lee is the choreographer for the Terminus Modern Ballet Theatre, the poet, and she is so kind to be sitting here with me today virtually to talk a little bit about the poet and what kind of drove her and inspired her in creating this, and a little bit about her process in doing so. So first off, I'd love if you could just tell me a little bit about yourself and your experience in choreography and dance.
Sure. I've been dancing my whole life since I was a little girl. I grew up in Connecticut. After I graduated from high school, I made a deal with my mom and dad if they would let me defer from college to give me a chance to become a professional ballerina. And so we made a deal. They let me take a year to see if I could find a professional contract. And I moved to New York for a couple of years and danced with the Joffrey Ballet in their second company. So I was there for a couple of years in New York. And then fast forward, Atlanta Ballet. I met the director of Atlanta Ballet in New York, and he invited me to come down here and be one of the company members of Atlanta Ballet. And that's where I was for 22 years. Eventually, a few of us decided to start our own contemporary dance company called Terminus Modern Ballet Theatre. So that was a big step. We were nervous, and it was a big change for us, and that was about 4 years ago. And I'm a resident choreographer with that company, and have progressed from being a performer to mostly being a creator and a teacher there.
What kind of inspired you to start this particular project of the poet, and specifically focusing on dementia in your work?
Originally, my concept for this ballet wasn't necessarily narrowed into the experience of dementia, not right away, not in the very first drafts of it. It was going to be probably someone that was close to the end of their life, though, sharing kind of what their bits of wisdom were about life from the end of life, what the most important things are to remember. And then it quickly became more specific to dementia. And that was through conversations with my life partner, Joseph Guay, who also became a collaborator with me and helped me direct the film. And he knew that my personal story, I have a loved one going through it, and it's, part of our daily lives now, that he felt like I was tiptoeing around the subject when it was very clear that it could very much be the story, and to, share a caregiver and a person going through dementia, that story, that so many people can relate to, or can relate to the fear of it, whether or not you're directly or indirectly involved with a loved one or family member that might be going through that. Something about it that frightens us, because it's literally, something that feels like your identity is kind of being taken away from you, your memories of what life is. So all the fundamental things that you think, you base your life on, all of a sudden start to fade away. How scary is that? And how scary is that to see a loved one go through it? So as soon as that idea went kind of into the universe, I knew it was the right one, because it was such a close subject. It was felt vulnerable to go there, but it felt so legitimately like true to go there, because I understood the fear and the anger and the denial and the hopes and the prayers that you go through as a family when you experience it. So I'm like, oh, it's the right thing to do, and it would be incredibly meaningful.
Thank you for sharing all of that. I can totally understand a lot of like a mix of emotions, that vulnerability and that fear that both go into the story itself, right? And I imagine what you might have been feeling as an artist. And that was actually my next question for you, is how did you feel about exploring, these topics, whether it's end of life or dementia, and, taking these topics that are oftentimes shied away from and really like embracing it head on?
Once you get over kind of the doubts and questions, is this the right thing to do? Is it too much? Are people going to kind of be open-minded to it in a way, because it's not a comfortable topic. It's not easy to contend with, right? So I wanted to approach it in a way that was full of hopeful questions, and the things that really come into focus when you go through this is really what do you hold on to, what's important, who are we really when identity goes away, or familiar labels and faces and names and definitions start to go away. Who are we still beyond that? You know, what can we anchor ourselves in? What connects us still? What connects us to life and love and connection? And those are the questions I wanted to ask and put out there. And I was asking them in life too. So it was kind of, it made sense to kind of overlap art and life. I thought it was important to still have compassion and empathy for the poet's character who's gone through dementia. So we had to kind of understand maybe the darker side of things too, and the frustration and confusion and the sense of loss. Yeah. So we go through all of those levels, but I think we end up coming out of it still with a lot of, I hope, transcending some of the pain and some of the questions.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's something I felt as a viewer was that resonated, was that it didn't, despite facing such a heavy topic, is that it felt light, and that even though there were moments of pain and, challenging, it still, the overall feel was, light and uplifting, which I think is, I imagine is hard to find in such a difficult topic too. What kinds of artistic choices did you make to kind of find that balance between that, that embracing like the challenges of this disease, but also wanting to find the levity and the hope and answer some of those questions? How did that end up being reflected like in the choreography and in the film choices?
Well, we had a lot of elements at our fingertips because it was a film. And I'm so glad it ended up being a film. It actually, in discussion, initially, we weren't sure it was going to be a film or a live show. And of course, with the last year and a half, we've done a lot of more digital projects. And so it just felt like the perfect timing to dive into the genre of film. And for this one, I'm so glad we did, because we really got a chance to kind of exploit, emotion and subtlety with close-ups and angles and cinematography, time of day, that kind of thing. So that helped a lot. The music was a big factor in kind of communicating all that. Andy Kurtz is a really brilliant composer, and he's really tuned into like the emotional waves and levels of what we needed to do. So he helped me communicate the highs and the lows, and I wanted big sweeping, kind of dreamy like musical sequences to, kind of communicate his imagination and the poetry. And then of course the darker, more kind of ethereal moments musically really helped kind of show the darker dream, and when he gets lost and when he wanders and gets confused. Sonically, we really were able to capture that musically. So that helped a lot. And of course I had, just a really great team. Ben Rawson was our lighting designer. And of course the element of lighting is always probably an unsung hero. People, when it's done well, you don't necessarily like point it out and notice it because it's done so well and it feels natural. So he was a big one in that too. And then I just had amazing dance artists that could really help me tell the story, who were great actors, and the team was really helpful to help me tell the story. Mm-hmm.
I also want to comment on that. You also really showed the dynamic of the caregiver too. Can you speak on that a little bit also? And that, again, that balance between that focus on the person living with the diagnosis, but also that this is an experience that the caregiver might see differently, right? And it can be just as challenging for them, if not sometimes more. And
absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I wanted to show the story from both sides of it a little bit. And certainly, I could be a good witness for the caregiver side. I mean, it's interesting how you try to like observe what's happening, not only with the loved one that's going through it, but also with the close family around and how that affects them, to wit witness a loss of someone you love, that the way that you knew them, um, that was important to show, and also to show strength in those people that help and take care, and and give their love and energy to that person. Um, it's funny how much, when you're called upon to help someone that needs you, how strong you can realize that you are. So I really wanted to show the daughter. I called her M. I wanted to show her character as she was so strong, and yet you subtly saw what she was going through, maybe when someone wasn't watching or when he wasn't watching, but how strong she could be when he was there, facing her. I wanted to show that part of it too, because that's real, right? You put on a game face sometimes to be the strong one, but you're going through so much as well.
Yeah,
It can be exhausting.
so
I
true.
did. I had amazing conversations about it, because not everyone talks that outrightly about it, because there's still maybe sense of like, being private about those kind of things, which I
Mhm.
understand. And so when you share this kind of story that can feel so personal, people really come out with their own personal stories too. And you're like, wow, so many people are touched by this. It's everywhere, whether it's direct in an everyday level that someone's experiencing it, or a family member, or it within like 2 degrees of separation. You feel like everyone has some type of experience with it that they can really understand it and be touched by it.
For sure. So it sounds like you've had a response that has been very positive and has really sparked a lot of conversation. Is that
I felt really um, validated by the response. It was one of the most challenging projects I've ever done, probably because it was a new medium, and just because I felt responsible for carrying such an important topic well. I wanted to serve it well, so it was difficult. I'm not going to lie. And then to hear the response of people, and how profound it was for them, or how emotionally um, elevating it was, or I got a lot of people saying they just broke down and cried, but not in a way that felt like it left them with like heaviness. So that was beautiful. I mean, we all felt something together with that, right? I Even in the editing room, I got emotional watching certain scenes over and over. I would still get touched and feel that emotion from it. So I knew we were doing something profoundly good. And then to hear the feedback from it of people, whether or not they personally were going through something like that or not, to feel so moved by that on a human level, and to feel like there was a message of continuation and love and connection at the end that does not go away. I know it broke a lot of people's heart. There was one line, where he doesn't recognize his daughter and says, I don't remember your name. I don't remember who you might be, but I know that I love you. I know that you love me. And I, it's so heartbreaking and so beautiful at the same time. I think that is directly inspired by some of the interviews I researched with dementia patients, and quotes that their loved ones, gave. That was one, that they wouldn't remember a name or an identity, but they knew that person was love to them. And how that's so amazing to me. I think if anything resonates or stays with you, that would be my hope.
Yeah, I think such an important reminder for family and caregivers to see is that emotional connection stays strong, and to be able to have that like validated and reinforced by your work, I imagine does wonders for so many caregivers, that
Yeah,
emotional love stays there.
it is felt. It is felt. Being cared for is understood. Being seen and respected is understood. Being engaged and connected, and someone to laugh with, that's all understood. That never, you know, and I see improvement when you can really allow that to still happen. There's still room for even learning and growth, even there's little pockets of it still,
Mhm. Mhm.
and not to shy away from like engaging them and letting them live and enjoy things, even if it's simple.
What was some of your experience like doing research about dementia and taking some of the elements of dementia as a disease itself and infusing that into your project?
Yeah, it was cool to start to learn more as I was experiencing it in life and with this project, to kind of dive a little deeper into understanding it. And that's why in the film I touch upon the different elements that do still connect. When I see it with, in my own experience, music was a huge one, is a huge one. And I realized that the memory of music and where we learn music and remember music is in a different part of our brain than where our memories and our short-term memories are. So that stays intact. So it's so beautiful to like research that and to know that that's a consistent way to kind of connect dementia patients to who they are, and to remember, and to all of a sudden remember their life soundtrack in a way. And I definitely saw that in my personal experience when there was music that played that was familiar. It was immediate connection, immediately singing with the lyrics. It was so beautiful to see that. So that was a big scene in the film where that just lights up Charlie, and he all of a sudden can become the poet that he was his whole life, even though there's moments where he loses words completely. Something about that triggered him, and he was able to create again and be articulate again.
Curious, kind of like building on that a little bit more too, why do you feel it's important to show dementia and topics, like end of life in art?
I feel like art is a world where we can touch upon all the things that people feel. Maybe it's not always easy to articulate or quantify or analyze, but when it comes to those things that are a little mysterious but universal, I really feel like that's our ballpark. That's where we can really play and kind of connect to that layer of our existence that's underneath everything else that we're living every day. Mm-hmm. And we all live the stuff every day, and we're all busy and we're all stressed out and we're all spinning in our heads a little bit here and there, and we're trying our best. But I feel like art can really tap into the things underneath the meat and potatoes of why we're really here and who we really are. Mm-hmm. And it's not like a frivolous thing to tap into. It's fundamental, and it's so needed. And it's like, it's just as important as, food and water and oxygen, I think, because otherwise what are we doing? What's the point, right?
I love that. I think that's so important. It sounds almost like what you were really trying to expose in The Poet as well, is really like what we fundamentally all are, right? Taking away some of those extra layers, like what's there. So that's really beautiful. I love that. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us. It's really been such a pleasure and so lovely, and we're so honored to be partnered with you and to hear more about your experience. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for reaching out. I really appreciate being a part of this.